At some point in time, if you've had a chipper as long as I have, the bearings go bad. Well, it's a tough job. It's a real tough job. And my friend Randy, he's been my mechanic for over 30 years. I called him up and he said, let's get it done. And what you just saw there was getting the casting part off. And with a grinder, you grind through the top, and because it's just a casting, you can pressure it and it breaks at the bottom, and that part comes off just fine. See, the problem is that over time, that bearing gets so hot or used up in such a way that it just binds itself to the shaft, and to get it off of there is a nightmare. So this is a technique that he has come up with, and I'm sure other people have done this. It was new to me, so I thought I'd share it. I didn't know how to do this, so Randy said, piece of cake, let's get it done. Well, it wasn't a piece of cake, it was a challenge. But with a cutoff wheel, you've got the outer housing, and then you've got the outside race that you've got to get off of there. And he made 2 cuts in there. I don't know if he needed to do 2 cuts because it actually required yet a 3rd cut to get it off of there on the other side. Maybe he wanted to release some of the pressure on and get the bearings loose or something. I don't know. But this didn't take very long at all. Each of these cuts took 4 or 5 minutes. There shows the outer housing that it's a piece of cast steel, and if you pry it, it breaks really easy on the bottom. So you don't have to cut it in 2 places. You can just get in there with a wedge-shaped chisel and pop it a few times, then pry it, and it'll come apart. Now the bottom race was a bit more of a challenge. It's a little bit thicker. It's right up next to the shaft. This took about 15 or 20 minutes to get this off of here, and quite a bit of cutting. We went through 2 wheels doing this part of the cutting. It's a much more hardened steel, and you got to be careful. It's a dangerous tool. I said you want the guard on there for this. He said no, the guard gets in the way for this. So he does have safety glasses on. He's got a glove on the hand that's close to it. I was wincing a little bit, thinking, oh, that's not safe. There's the brand new bearing. It's a couple $100 for that part. I called the shop and asked them about it, and it was an expensive job. That's the part that holds the pulley on, and you notice there's 6 holes on there. 3 of them hold it in place, and the other 3 you put back in place and you twist it to separate it, because the pulley and that pulley holder are beveled. There he goes. He's got that 1 cut. He was able to put a wedge-shaped chisel in there, and it separated enough so he could get it out, so he didn't have to take 2 cuts. He did scar up the shaft there just a little bit. It's not deep at all, but very important that you got to clean the shaft, because if there's anything at all on there, you're not going to get the new part on there. So we had to get, there was some old paint on there. I didn't tell you, but this is a very old chipper. This is a 1997, I believe. So I've had this chipper for over 22 years. I replaced the other bearing at one point. This is the original bearing, so it lasted for 22 years. Another thing that's important, you don't have to pull the whole wheel out of there, but if you put a spacer in there, that part that just fell down, you can hold it in place while you're doing the whole work, and it doesn't jam down on you. You just have to find a pipe or a piece of metal that fits it. Then you got to get it back in there very carefully. You've got to get it back all the way up so that it fits tightly against it. I did notice the belt had a crack in it, so I ordered a new belt at the same time. I didn't show putting the belt on. That was a little bit of a challenge. It was real tight. The belts do slacken up. They do stretch a little bit. So there's the bearing itself. So next we've got to put the pulley back on. And you can see there's the pulley and the part that holds the pulley to the shaft. And once again, you put the bolts in on the other 3 holes. They're open on this side. The threaded side is what separates it and pulls it apart. It wasn't too hard. That came apart quite easy. It took about 10-15 minutes to put all this back together. And because each of these parts is cone shaped, you've got to put them on evenly, a little bit here, a little bit there, all the way around until that cone works itself up close. Then the last thing that you want to do is, you notice the end of the shaft, how it protrudes? we made a measurement before we took it off, and we knew exactly where it was because you want those pulleys to line up. And then the last thing we did was fired it off, and it ran smooth. One boo-boo. And that's Randy. He's been doing this for 35 years. Really knows his stuff. Thank you, Randy. I really appreciate everything you've done for me over all the years. I couldn't have done this myself.